Cool. I think we can get started. So I'll call this meeting to order at 12:05 p.m. I just want to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. Unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations in any way, and that we are currently situated on occupied territories. I'd like to also acknowledge that I'm currently in what's colonially known as Surrey, meaning that I'm currently situated and calling in from the unceded Coast Salish lands of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Stolo, Kwantlen, Coquitlam, and Halquimium Treaty Group as well. Yeah, I think, as we all know, like, it's a very difficult time for like our Indigenous community members, so it's something just to keep in mind, and if there's any way we can support, just to keep those things in mind and try to be proactive about our solidarity with Indigenous folks. I think we could just start this meeting with a quick roll call of attendance. I can go first and I'll just read through the list. I'll put it in the chat, but it'll just be name, pronouns, access needs, names, pronouns, access needs. And as always, feel free to have your camera on, off, whatever works for you. The accessibility committee used to be really inaccessible a couple of years ago, so I try not to uphold that irony anymore. So do what is best for you. Yeah, so my name is Serena. My pronouns are she, they. For access needs, my dad is going to be dropping off some subway soon, so I might be getting an interruption. And my internet is sometimes unstable, so I'll probably assign you all co-hosts, but other than that, I should be good. I know that Stephanie is probably going to come in late because she has class until 1:20. Warren has sent in regrets for the semester because he's on co-op. And that brings us to Nick, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Nick. My pronouns are he, him, his, and all my access needs have been met.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. And Graham, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name's Graham. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my accessibility needs are met, but I think I need to leave by like 2 because of my other job.
Of course, sounds good. And Brianna?
Hi, I'm Brianna. My pronouns are she, her. My access needs are currently met.
Perfect, thank you. So I think we'll move right on to consent agenda. So be resolved to adopt the agenda by unanimous consent. Today, the consent agenda includes matters arising from the minutes. Be resolved to file the April 26th, 2021 Accessibility Committee minutes, which was the first Accessibility Committee meeting. That was pretty introductory, so I gave it a look over. I thought it looked okay. But if anyone has any objections to the agenda, or consent agenda rather, feel free to let me know. Okay, cool. Oh, let's see. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'll just call the question. Be resolved, or I guess like seeking unanimous consent. If there's any dissent, please raise your hand. But I think I'm doing this right. Be resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, it looks like it is carried unanimously. If you notice any issues with my Robert's rules, definitely let me know. I'm definitely not fully practiced on it yet. The next item, I think, is adoption of the agenda. So be resolved to adopt the agenda as currently presented. It basically includes one motion for the Transformative Justice Summer Series and a bunch of discussion items. But yeah, is there any discussion on the agenda? Any amendments that folks would like to make? Okay, cool. Seeing none, I'll call the question for this one too. Seeking unanimous consent, please unmute or raise your hand if you dissent. Be resolved to adopt the agenda as currently presented. Oh, I need a mover and a seconder, not for the consent agenda, but for this one. So I'll move. I like to move the motion, and I'll seek a seconder. Would anyone like to second?
I can second.
Perfect. Thank you. Graham seconds. Perfect. Okay. Now, with no discussion, I'll call the question. So, seeking unanimous consent, please unmute your microphone or raise your hand if you dissent. Okay, cool. Perfect. So that motion is carried unanimously. And the next motion is new business, transformative justice summer series. So I will move this motion. So it reads as follows. Be resolved to approve $7,341.95 from the Accessibility Fund for the Transformative Justice Summer Series. May I get a seconder?
Yeah, sure, I'll second.
Perfect, thank you, Nick. So we'll move to discussion. I can provide some context for this. SFPERG is doing a transformative justice summer series that runs from, the first one was last week, Saturday, that I went to, and the last one I think is towards the end of July. So basically they have ASL, they have cart captioning, and those things can run very costly, especially as they have two different ASL interpreters as well. So they've provided us with a couple of quotes and how they got to this 7,000 number. For context, I think there's like over $400,000 in the accessibility fund. And that's my dad, sorry. But I think everything looks good. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this motion?
I would love to speak to this motion. Based on the criteria of how we have approved things in the past, this basically meets all of our criteria, besides the fact that technically it's not a member who is putting it forward. It's a different group on campus. But SFPERG does great work and we work with them often. And so I would highly recommend just approving this money.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brianna. That sounds good. Does anyone have any other further discussion on this motion?
So you mentioned, Brianna, that it's an organization and not an individual that's doing that, like requesting the money. Could that cause an issue, or should that be fine?
So the long and short of it is, there is an individual who is presenting it, but they're part of a larger organization and they are not a member is the possible thing. On our criteria, the person requesting the accessibility thing being a member is something that, you know, is put as like a criteria where this may not be approved if it's not a member. It's put as like a higher priority criteria. I don't anticipate it causing an issue, especially since, you know, members are attending this and this is for the benefit of members. But I just did want to flag that just in case, just so that's known, that technically it doesn't follow that criteria, despite the fact that it meets basically every other criteria and more than passes the kind of like point total that our old system that we're still using works with.
All right, cool.
Okay, sounds good. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, I think I'll call the question. So be it resolved to approve $7,341.95 from the Accessibility Fund for the Transformative Justice Summer Series. I'll seek unanimous consent. Please unmute your microphone or raise your hand if you do dissent. Okay, cool. Seeing no dissent, this motion carries unanimously. I guess I have a question, Brianna. But this just goes through yourself now, right? To do like the paperwork and that kind of thing.
I will process it today.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think we can move on to discussion items. The first one is DNA meetings and cart captioning. This was something, I think we actually postponed the DNA meeting for today because it runs into this meeting. But DNA is going to be looking for cart captioning in the future. I just wanted to flag that for this group. It'll be like similar to the motion that we just did, but at a much lower amount for the accessibility fund for cart captioning for our meetings. Honestly, I don't have much to add other than just a quick update for that.
Sorry, we do need to approve this as an accessibility committee so that we can take money out of the accessibility fund for this. And so it doesn't have to come from DNA's programming budget.
Right, that's correct. I just haven't had the chance to speak with DNA members about it or like get a specific quote on what it would cost for the semester, which is why I didn't put the motion forward yet. But I'll try to do that for the next meeting. Okay, cool. The next discussion item is our next meeting time. So the situation is, do I need a mover and seconder for discussion items? I think so.
I don't think so.
No? Okay, cool. So next meeting time, the thing is, our group has a lot of conflicting schedules. This time doesn't work for Stephanie, and Warren is on co-op, so that kind of puts us in a tight position where if like one of us can't make it, then we don't have quorum to pass motions. So what I'll do, instead of like this, committees usually have like a reoccurring time where we can like really figure out like this is the time that we're meeting every couple of weeks. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a time that works for everyone yet. So for the future, I'll just continue sending out when to meets for this committee until we come up with like a solid time that works for everyone. But yeah, I just wanted to flag that as well. Is there any other discussion on this topic? Okay, cool. So our next discussion item is, Nick says in the chat, sounds like a good plan going forward. Okay, cool, I'm glad. But as always, like if you folks have any suggestions or any questions about like the accessibility committee,
Well,
Did anyone else lose audio and then video there?
yeah, no, I think she just timed out.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, we'll wait.
It did
until
say
she
their
gets
internet
back.
was unstable.
Yeah. She's back.
sorry, that was definitely my internet, like I mentioned earlier, and I forgot to make you all co-hosts too, so I'll do that now. Let's see, where was I at? Oh, right, Brianna's discussion item on accessibility grant process final approval.
Excellent. Okay, so the situation. We had an old grant approval system. We've just seen it in action with what we did here. It's not great. It's a point system. It's like very much like, do we think that this event is worth spending our money on, rather than do we think that this event could be made more accessible? I've put together a new system. It has gone to communications. It has been kind of approved along the way, but I'm about to send it out to be converted into plain text and to be made screen reader friendly. Those are expensive. And so I wanted to make sure that we are good with what the process is before we get those made, so that we don't have to spend that money again, at least until we have a big update to the system. I did link, Serena, do you want to share the link that has all of the documents? We can maybe just run through like the guidelines document. I think that's maybe the one that has had the least kind of, I don't know, the accessibility committee has done much with that document yet. But basically, I just want to make sure that there's no other changes that need to be made before it's time. So if you go into, it should go into, is it in this attachments folder?
Yeah, it should be.
It is not.
It's, let's see. I'll try to find it in your original email then. I'll try to send the link.
Yeah, that'd be great. What I'll say in the meantime is like, this is also the case with the events checklist, which we'll get to in a sec, and some other stuff as well. But yeah, this one I really want to make sure that we're all good on, because also this is going to be our new way of doing things as soon as it gets ready to go.
Brianna, I can't seem to find it. What was the title of the document again?
It should be a folder that's okay. Let me see if I can just grab it.
Okay.
Because it should be complete drafts, accessibility grant application process. The name of it. Let me just grab the link and let me just send it in here. So the main one we're going to go through is in the guidelines. I'm just going to look at the PDF there. As you can see, we have a Word document version, a PDF version, and a large text version. This is sort of what we've got going on for now, at least. And then the document itself is basically just, it kind of runs through how to apply and also what the expectations are for applications. The big crux of it is that the applications are submitted with the new application form, which doesn't ask for as much information and mostly just tries to get an idea of what is being planned. And I think that was partially put together by the past accessibility committee. If you look under section 2, review process, you can see the criteria, which is like, is the applicant a member? Was the application submitted with 2 weeks notice? Is the application filled out comprehensively with all crucial details present? Are cost estimates within our expectations for the type of accommodation? Does the event follow accessibility policy principles? Do stated groups or guest speakers follow accessibility policy principles? Does the accommodation address the stated barrier? And then some little explanations for each of those and why they're on there. The new way this works, rather than having a point system where we evaluate to see if it's good enough, is if any of these are in doubt or unsure, then we will basically, I will contact the applicant and basically be like, hey, this wasn't this wasn't clear to us. We don't really understand this. Could you please clarify this? And then that gives them some time to do an appeal. The amount of time given is basically, I believe that it's our responsibility to try and get it to them as quickly as possible. Yeah, it's the responsibility of the SFSS to return a denied application with at least 5 working days between the date of return and the date of the event, assuming the application was submitted with 2 weeks notice. So that's a thing to note, is that it's up to us to try and get these done as quick as possible. So that is probably the only thing. And again, the way that our new process works at this point is that any amount that is 3,000 or less, I can approve on my own. And so I can make sure that that gets done within 5 working days. It's only for numbers above that this might end up being relevant to us, in which we might need to end up doing some sort of like urgent meeting or approval via email or something like that, just so that we're giving them enough time to actually appeal. Because yeah, previously I don't think there was an expectation on us, which is just like, you know, we give it to them 2 days before the event and say, okay, you could appeal. And that's just not good. This is not what we want to do. So this should be a little bit of an easier process to deal with. And then at the end, when they're approved, they just need to submit a post-event report, which basically just asks them like, was there any changes to the amount of money that you used? And they'll say that and gives us a bit of information. And then the idea is that I will should be able to use that amount of information to whip up a check rec and get that submitted and get that money to them as quickly as possible. That's the idea. If there's any particular questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will, yeah. Yeah. I seem to know that I'm good to go forward and make some alternative versions.
Yeah, I gave it a look over, Brianna, and I think it looks good. I didn't have any questions or anything like that.
Awesome, fantastic.
Is there any other further discussion on this item? Okay, if not, I'm gonna go back and to the agenda to see what our next discussion item is. Event checklist, final approval. So back to you, Brianna.
Yep, same situation. This one's not a process thing. I'll link this as well. So this is basically, the reason why all of this is coming up is because our, if you look at our accessibility policy, there's a number of appendices. And appendices are basically just our space to have a whole bunch of extra stuff. One of the things that's in the appendices is an events checklist, which is our kind of version of, hey, here's how you can plan a more accessible event. So this is the link. There's 2 versions of it, one for in-person events and online events. In-person events has all of the checklist stuff about like finding a good location, whereas online is about like how to make sure that your Zoom thing has captions and stuff like that. And so these are basically the other things. They're a little bit more chill. There's a bunch of sections. They're basically, the intent is to arrange them by the kind of phase of planning that you're doing, right? You have an initial planning phase. And then when you're looking at the location, then there's a section for that. When you're looking at getting food, there's a section for that. Like basically just, it can serve as kind of a companion for whoever is working on stuff. And the main thing that it's trying to do that isn't done by, for example, the like equity, diversity, and inclusion events checklist that SFU puts out, is that we have numbers for things. Rather than just saying make sure it's wide enough, we are saying make sure it is 60 inches so that a wheelchair can roll in it. And so that means that it's a little bit more in depth, but it's also meant to be a little bit easier to use because you can just take a tape measure and do it up. So yeah, I don't know if there's any particular things that need discussion here. Just again want to make sure before I get it sent off for alternative formats.
Cool, thank you, Brianna. I think it looks good to me. Is there any other discussion on this? If folks have any questions or anything like that. Okay, cool. Seeing none, I think we can move on to the next one, which is accessibility audit.
So we need to do this. So the accessibility, so basically the sub needs a proper audit for accessibility. We actually just, I think last week received from Level Playing Field. So we've been working with this organization based out of Calgary called Level Playing Field. They do a bunch of evaluations and audits of various spaces to see if they're accessible. They did an audit, a virtual audit of the sub, and that came in last week. They need to be flown in to do a proper physical audit to confirm what they found in the virtual audit and to do stuff that they can't do from there. We should fly them in soon because we're going to be opening up soon, the sub like properly. And so we need to approve, like, I guess, from my understanding, as soon as we approve like flying them in, we can get started on that process, and I can liaise with them and make sure that they are flown in. Obviously we haven't been able to because of COVID. We are now in phase 3. It's been, technically we could have done it earlier. But things are a little bit safer to do so now. And obviously this is all with their approval. Like, we'll talk to them and be like, hey, are you comfortable being flown in right now? Or would you prefer to wait until a later date? But based on where things are at, it seems that we just need to approve going forward as a committee with flying them in to do a physical audit whenever they are available. We've set aside the money, we just need to do it.
Okay, cool. So do you think, like, once we approve the money, do you have an idea of like how long it'll take them like to get here or like get the process started?
All I have is I've contacted Aisha about this, and Aisha has said that once the AC, the accessibility committee has approved this, we can begin making arrangements. I don't know how long it'll be. Theoretically, it could be, I don't know, sometime in July, probably more likely to be sometime in August. Ideally before September, might not be.
Do you think, I guess, like, would you feel comfortable, or do you think I should like send them an email being like, oh, this is going to come to our next accessibility committee meeting, like, and we're going to be looking to approve this funding, maybe to give them like a heads up, maybe get like a potential like timeline going?
I will be happy to send them that email.
Great, thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item?
I just want to be clear that we don't have the ability to approve this right now, yes?
I could like amend the agenda to include it if we wanted to do it today. I would just need a number.
A number for like how much money is needed for this? Okay, cool. I will try and get a hold of what that number might be. Because I'm unsure at this time.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. And yeah, just let me know once you have that number, and I'll try to send out like the when to meet pretty soon. So hopefully we can have like a date set pretty quickly here for our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. If there's no further discussion, I think we can move on to our next discussion item, which is 7.6, accessibility vendors.
Back to me. So this is related to our other stuff. Again, I will link this. This is basically, the idea is if we can get, so in order for us to be able to not have to reimburse students for accessibility things, for accessibility services, for us to just have direct relationships where someone comes to us and says, I need ASL for my event, can you set this up? And we'll say yes, and we have an ASL person that we work with, or organization that we work with. They send someone, we pay them directly. In order for us to do that, we need to set up accounts with a variety of vendors. In order for us to set up accounts with a variety of vendors, we first need to make sure that these vendors are ones that we want to work with. And so this is basically just making sure that none of these are an issue to work with. I'll go through the list of like who we are planning to work with at this point. The list includes Wavefront Center. They do ASL, and so they would be who we do work with for that. We would also, I believe, be working with them for plain language documents, which is converting documents to a kind of a lower reading level. We have Mosaic BC, who we'd work with for multilingual interpretation, and Worldwide Express, who we would work with for multilingual translation. We have Accurate Real-Time Captioning, who we would work with for live captioning, and the Braille Bookstore, who we would work with for Braille transcription. And then Document Solutions, we would work with for some stuff, but we would also probably have specific groups that we would work with for screen reader friendly documents, and that'll just be a matter of setting that up. Yeah, so this is the current list. As long as there's nothing that anyone has against any of these groups, then we are good to move forward and start setting up accounts with these groups.
Thank you. The only group that I've personally worked with is Accurate Real Time for like live captioning, and they've always been good with us, and like super flexible too. So, but the other names, nothing really stands out to me as like this is like a terrible group that I've heard bad things about or anything like that. So I think it looks good to me.
Cool, sounds good.
Well, is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, cool. I think we can move on to our next one, which is accessibility consultations.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I brought a lot. And yes, so this is something that, as we've been looking at setting up things like these vendor lists and also getting some supplies in, some accessibility supplies and things like that, it's become clear that some stuff we just don't have the kind of lived experience within the group. And so what I've basically put forward is the proposal of a program. Once this is approved by the AC, I will have this submitted to the board. But basically the proposal is for a consultation program in which we can pay folks, including members, but not exclusively, to basically give us information about their lived experience. Let me just share this. Basically, it'll give us some, some experience and information so that we make the right calls when we don't personally have lived experience in something. The general idea, and I don't know, Serena, if you think I should go through the whole document or if I should just kind of summarize.
Maybe, sorry, my computer takes forever to load stuff, so it's still loading for me, but I think a summary might be good.
Cool. Okay, so then I'll explain kind of what the idea here is. The purpose is to help develop a knowledge base for the accessibility department that is based on lived experience and the testimony of people with a variety of disabilities. Basically, the idea is we would offer $322 honorariums per person. I've based that off of CARFAC recommendations, which is like a group that works with like artists, and that's their rate for consultations. If we want to change that amount, we could. This is none of this, obviously this is a proposal, none of this is set in stone. The idea is we need to find reliable information on accessibility best practices. And it's better to do that through lived experience than it is to try and do Google searches and stuff. A lot of what you find when you do Google searches or kind of preliminary research is, you know, universal design and truly accessible design is costly and time consuming. And so a lot of people like to take shortcuts and propose those as universal design. But when you talk to actual individuals, you'll find that sometimes those don't work for people. And so this would be, rather than us just going online and trying to find a source and seeing if we can trust them, it's better for us to actively work with folks who have lived experience. Details, in terms of details, consultation may seek to gain knowledge from people with specific disabilities, people who use specific accommodations, people with needs that are especially underserved by abled society, and people with particular intersecting identities. This is not a wage, to be clear, this is an honorarium that's being offered to folks, and so it doesn't change with the amount of hours spent for consultation. It would be whatever amount we agree on, whether it's 322 or another amount. We will either, that is not a wage, that's an honorarium. It could be members, it could be non-members. Members will be prioritized, but if there are no members who come forward with the lived experience that we need, then it will be kind of open. There's a lot of possible subjects that consultations could include, which would be like organizations and groups that provide accessibility services, accessibility supplies and assistive technologies, documented website accessibility, accessibility issues on campus or within the SFSS, the use of accessibility funding, feedback or suggestions on projects or processes, and other accessibility subjects that require knowledge of lived experience. They might be text-based, phone or video call, in person, or another method of communications the person is most comfortable with. It's basically meant to be like one person gets an honorarium per like consultation, and consultations are usually about one issue. Consultation might cover multiple issues, but generally it's assumed one per person per issue. And we don't want to just pull from one person, we want to gather from multiple people. Gathering the information doesn't give us an obligation to use it, but we should really try to use it. And that if conflicting information appears, it's best to gather more information, do more consultations, stuff like that, until a consensus can be reached. Basically, the consultant has the right to determine like how they will be credited, or if they will be anonymous, who it may be shared with, whether that's only the information gatherer within the organization or with the general public, whether they can be quoted or paraphrased, and any other considerations for credit or confidentiality. And it's done as an as-needed basis. There isn't necessarily a staff person, but it'll usually be the coordinator or the assistant, or the committee or the accessibility committee, but could be anyone within the SFSS. Yeah, and that is kind of the basic gist of things. I suspect that in terms of advertising and stuff like that, it'll be like maybe an open call, might be end up in a newsletter somewhere. Like it would just be kind of, you know, word being spread that like, hey, this is an opportunity, if people would like to undertake it. So yeah, I'm bringing this forward, asking, is this something that we as a committee want to move forward on? It would make my job easier, certainly, and I'm sure that a coordinator would also love to have this system in place so that they may gain good information when they're making certain calls. But yeah, it needs accessibility committee approval and then to generally get like SFSS approval through the board, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Brianna, I just had a question. Does like knowledge base for the accessibility department is referring to like accessibility staff and the accessibility committee?
Yeah, that's how I would define. I mean, we do have an accessibility department now. Just financially, it has been set up, and that does include. That includes us. Yeah, that includes the coordinator, assistant, and committee.
Cool, thank you. But yeah, I'm in support of this program. I think it would be super dope. But does anyone else have any comments or questions about this?
No, this all seems really good to me.
Okay, cool. So then, Brianna, what would be next steps for this? So should we like write up a motion for the next accessibility committee to like recommend to the board that they approve this program or something similar?
Yeah, that sounds correct. And then I need to just take this to the board for approval, which I don't know exactly what that process looks like. I haven't done it yet, but I will look into it.
Yeah, I can definitely help and ask Almas and Corbett about like if we'd have to include like certain numbers or an estimate to create like a line item like within the budget or something like that. But yeah,
Totally.
I think I can definitely ask.
Totally.
Okay, cool. If there isn't other discussion on this item, this is our last discussion item, but I did want to mention one thing maybe as like an announcement, even though I didn't put it in the agenda. But there has been like 1 or 2 applications for this committee for like at-large members. So I'll try to get those folks approved and hopefully included in the when to meet soon. If it takes more than a week or 2, like I'll ask Corbett about it since he's like VP internal. If it takes more than a week or 2, we might have to wait for a couple of meetings to get them included into our group, just because there's a lot of funding and motions that rely on the next meeting, so I don't want to push it off. Other than that, I think in our next meeting too, like I was hoping that we could like create like a strategic plan or like an annual plan together with the at-large members. But that's also another thing I don't want to push off forever. So we'll definitely do that at the next meeting, regardless of like if the at-large members are with us or not. Yeah, but I wanted to open up the space, like if anyone has like any questions, or I know it's like only the first couple of meetings, so some things like might still be unclear for folks. But it might help for me to say that like my intentions with the group, or with this committee rather, is to like obviously do all of like the funding approvals and that kind of thing that we do. But I also want to expand the scope a bit to like more general like accessibility, like campaigns and things on campus, because I did check the council policies and it is within this group's purview to like work with health and counseling and to work with, the terminology is outdated in the policy. It still says Center for Disabilities, but with the Center for Accessible Learning to like improve, I think it says like student health or student well-being or something of the like. But I think it would be dope if we could like kind of expand what we do and try to make things more accessible at the Center for Accessible Learning, because it's kind of not great in my opinion. I'm registered with them and it's annoying, to be honest. And I'm sure that we could find ways to improve like health and counseling as well. But I'd like to start this a fly right near me. But yeah, I just wanted to like open up the space if there's anything that folks would like to like ask or bring up, maybe like their intentions for the group. Yeah, feel free to do so. We can also talk about this more at our next meeting too.
I did have one thing I wanted to mention, which is we do need to do an annual plan at some point.
Definitely. I'm going to try to start that like together at our next meeting. I was thinking like sometimes the purview of like the accessibility committee isn't super clear, even though like it's titled accessibility committee. So I was trying to think of like maybe we could like I could put together like a summary or something of like what the committee's done, and then look at Jennifer's like exit report and bring that to the next meeting as well, so folks have an idea of like what has been done in the past and what we could do in the future.
I have just a really minor point. I just noticed that on the agenda, it has me listed as being the PSU, which is the Philosophy Student Union. I'm in the PSA. This, as I said, this is really minor, but just wanted to point that out.
I'll let Samaya know, who's our admin assistant. So thank you for pointing that out. Hopefully it'll be fixed for the future. PSA is physics, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Physics
cool.
Student Association, PSA.
Okay, cool. If there's no further discussion on this last point, I think we can move to adjournment. So yeah, so I think I do need a mover and seconder for this one. So I'll move this motion, be resolved to adjourn the meeting at 12:54. Can I get a seconder?
I'll second.
Nick seconds, perfect, thank you. And I'll call the question, seeking unanimous consent. Please unmute your microphone or raise your hand if you do dissent. Okay, cool. The motion is carried by unanimous consent. I will try to send out that one to meet fairly quickly, but otherwise, I hope folks have a good rest of their day. If you have any exams, best of luck on your exams. But otherwise, I'll talk to you folks later. See you.